Welcome to Speaking Holistically, the podcast that explores the power of alternative medicine, natural healing, and homeopathic solutions to help you achieve true wellness. Each week, Dr. Jen and Amy G dive into the world of holistic health, discussing researched, time-tested remedies with expert insights from Dr. Jen, as well as real-life stories from patients to empower you to take charge of your health. So if you're ready to embrace a more natural path to wellness, let's start speaking holistically, because true healing begins from within. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Speaking Holistically. I'm your co-host, Amy G. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Dr. Jen, and we are doing a Family Health Hub episode for men today on the dreaded erectile dysfunction.
Okay, so this is absolutely something that my male patients come in and never bring up. I probably in the last 23 or so years have had two men actually bring this up, and it was because the wives were like, "When you go in, you need to ask her about this." So otherwise they do not talk to me about this. They refuse to. And if I even bring it up to them, they look at the ground and they do anything that they can to try to get out of the room because they don't want to be there. So I try to make these conversations very, very straightforward, very a matter of fact. I'm not getting into the emotional aspect of the stuff. And the conversation lasts approximately 64 seconds because we honestly can't handle much more than that. So we're going to go over this, and because this does impact women as well. I mean, not the erectile aspect physically for them, but emotionally for them too. Because it does have an impact on our intimacy with them. And sometimes the men will blame their wives for the problem. So there's a lot that goes on with this. There's a lot of emotional ramifications of having erectile issues for sure. So we're going to start with the physical aspects of it, of how you end up with erectile issues. And if somebody doesn't know what that is, it basically means that the penis can't sustain its hardness to finish through intercourse and to actually finish. And sometimes they can't get an erection at all. Sometimes it just doesn't stay, or they can't finish. And usually that's because it has gotten a little bit soft. There's other issues that are related to not finishing as well, but we'll get into that a little bit more. So heart disease is one of them. Diabetes is another thing. So really our diets play a huge role into how our body functions. So basically a penis is chambers essentially of vascularity. So we're trying to get more vascularity or more blood to that area. So that's a big one, obviously. So if you have heart disease and you have decreased vascularity to, let's say, your toes or your hands or whatever, those extremities are going to be the last thing, that is going to get that oxygenation with the blood being carried there. So heart disease is a big one. Diabetes is another one. We know that circulatory issues happen with diabetes. High blood pressure is another one. So people think, with high blood pressure, you should be able to get erections because the pressure is so high, it should be getting out to every capillary. But the high blood pressure meds sometimes can impact that as well for men. So that's a big one. I'm not saying go off your high blood pressure meds. I'm not telling you what to do in this episode. I'm just telling you, I'm giving you the facts, ma'am. That's it. Cholesterol can also be a portion of this. And it's interesting because the liver actually takes cholesterol and uses that to create hormones. And then the hormone precursors turn into testosterone at the end result, basically. High cholesterol actually can result in low hormone levels. And that's because the cholesterol that's in the blood should actually be being converted and utilized by the body. In the brain, 60 to 80% cholesterol. So brain function, cognition, stuff like that. But it also is going to help basically create hormones with the help of the liver. So the liver is a huge organ to support. I don't care who you are or what you are or where you are. Liver, I always say. So obesity also plays a role into this. And of course, we just talked about the side effects of certain meds, but especially blood pressure meds can play a role into this as well. So there's psychological reasons, stress, anxiety, depression. Obviously, getting out of your own head sometimes can be easier said than done. And as women, we absolutely know this. If we were thinking about the kids or a sick aunt or work stuff, it's like, I can't be there, but we don't have a physical manifestation of that stress that would show outwardly to our partner.
Such a great point.
Yeah, so we can kind of fake it more than they can for for obvious reasons. We can get through it sometimes, and I hate to say that, but it is true for a lot of women is like, okay, we'll just get through this, and especially in certain marriages, that's kind of the case, or certain relationships. So,
Or if they have like young kids at home and they work full time and it's like there's so much going on in their lives and so to be mentally present is tough, I think, for a lot of women in that stage in life. So,
well, and we'll get into that for sure on another podcast. But
yeah.
having your kids crawling all over you all day, and then having your husband come home and want to crawl all over you, you're like, oh my God, I'm touched out. Like I can't do this. So having that separation, sometimes we'll get into that a little bit more too on another podcast for sure, because that's a big one. But like I said, as women, we can fake it a little bit better than the guys can if they're not in the right headspace, right?
Yeah.
So also smoking, alcohol, and lack of exercise can absolutely be part of it. So exercise will help the blood pumping. It helps with circulation. So regular exercise is usually a very good idea and can be helpful in this. Obviously, alcohol is not a great idea. I'm sure men can absolutely attest to this after they've had a night of drinking with their friends. That's generally not something that's going to be great. So and smoking does impact the circulatory system as well. So, I mean, the penis is really mostly vascular. It really is. Without that vascularity, you're not ever going to get an erection if you don't have proper vascularity. So hormones play a huge role into this as well. And we will get into the prostate on another episode, because a lot of the stuff with the body, you can't just separate out like, oh, here's this, and here's this. Like it's
All connected.
It is. It's all connected, and more than connected, it's intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
So low testosterone can play a role into it. A lot of people are getting these low T clinics and stuff like that, and they have to do labs for the liver every 3 months because the testosterone, the synthetic testosterone, can increase your risk of cancers. So the women maybe don't know that, the men maybe don't think about it, or they don't care because they'd rather have an erection than not live. I don't know. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do naturally to increase the testosterone function. So I'll get into that a little bit more, but it's interesting because when you look at the traditional solutions, it's always meds. You see a guy getting into a nice hot tub and get the Cialis or the Viagra or whatever it is.
Oh God, those commercials are everywhere.
So, well, because there's a huge issue with this, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I've seen on social media about you can get this online discreetly and blah, 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 which is great, but those side effects. So anytime you take a pharmaceutical or any supplement, really, you want to look up any potential side effects. So if you start to have it, you know what they are. But it's mainly meds is their option. And you end up with an erection that lasts more than 12 hours or something. And it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, if I was a guy, that would end it for me. I'd be like, it sounds fun to begin with, but then after a while, you're like, okay, this is
Well,
miserable.
I'm thinking you have to walk around out in the world in the course of 12 hours, and how does that work? I mean,
Or not.
people
I mean,
people are going to see you. I mean, like, I don't know.
Well, so no, but I mean, I think it's an erection lasts more than 4 hours, I think is what the side effects and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. But you're 18 and you're loving it. So I don't know, Isn't that Alice Cooper? Anyway, I digress. So there's also implants. Some men actually go for the option of a penile implant, which
God, that's so extreme.
I would think that, I mean, obviously you're at a place of desperation for sure.
Yeah.
And then the other one would be vacuum. So not your Hoover at home.
Yeah,
but
I was like, vacuum.
Yeah, there's vacuum apparatuses that you can use, but I would think that after a while that would actually, it would be like using a vibrator all the time, and then you lose that sensation of it. I would think like it would be an overstimulation over time. So I've had patients who've actually damaged their female genitalia from the amount of usage from certain things. So
wow.
Yeah, so they like anything that you do too much or overstimulating the body. So I always like to go back and go, okay, where did this come from? What is actually going on? Let's go back and figure out what's happening and what's going on. So there are some natural things that we can do, because those are basically, in counseling, which I don't know a single man that is willing to do counseling. I'm sure there are, I just don't happen to know any of them. So women, They go to counselors. They want to talk things out. Men, they're not interested. Let's move on and get going. So, like I said, there are men out there. Don't need anyone flaming me on here for that. But in general, women are the ones that do the counseling. Men do some counseling, but for the most part, it's not the route that they take. So if they're stressed out, they're going to internalize it. They're going to deal with it themselves. They're not going to go tell their buddies. They don't tell their wives generally. They just try to manage it themselves. And that's how men function for the most part. So that being said, there are some natural things to balance out the testosterone. But before I get to that point, I do want to say that a lot of women are taking HRT. So they're doing hormone replacement therapy, which include like estrogens and progesterones and some testosterones. But when they are intimate with their husbands, kissing them, any kind of fluid exchanges, stuff like that, even if they're sweating and they're hugging or whatever the situation is, that will actually come out of the woman's skin and can impact the men's hormones. So like, you know, I said earlier, like, oh, some men blame their wives and for the stress levels or whatever the situation is, but also the HRT can have an impact on the male hormones. So then they need to go, or they think they need to go and go get testosterone injections or whatever, which honestly work at the beginning. Men feel virile, they feel amazing, they feel like they've never felt since they were 20, and they would rather die than not feel this way. But after a while, the testes will basically slow down and potentially stop the production of testosterone because there's too much in the blood. So your body is a self-regulating being, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it'll stop that or slow it down to the point because it's like, oh my gosh, we have too much testosterone. So now if they ever try to go off of it, it's almost impossible because they can't get out of bed. They don't feel good. Their brain, I mean, it's like what women experience with menopause, right? So that decrease of hormones. But I've had patients where they've done testosterone injections for 10 years and now they're getting to the point where they do an injection on Thursday and by Friday they feel like crap again. So it doesn't work and they can't keep increasing the amount because it's so damaging to the body. Oh
my God.
So I always tell people before you get to that point, try to find some other things to do if possible. There's quite a few solutions. One is a product from Standard Process called Prostate PMG. And the PMG stands for protomorphogen, and it actually can help support the prostate tissue, which can be part of this as well. So we'll get, like I said, we'll get into the prostate and PSA and stuff on another podcast. But saw palmetto, SAW. So saw palmetto is also a really good herb that can be very, very helpful for and being supportive of the prostate. So those two things can be very helpful. But to increase the testosterone, there's 3 things that I use or 4 things that I use. One is Tongkat. And so most people have not heard of it, but it's TONG and then KAT and then next word ALI. So, and then Tribulus is another one. Tribulus actually helps tremendously with the sex drive as well for men and women actually. So women who have a little bit lower testosterone as well, they can do both the Tongkat and the Tribulus together. They could actually do all of these, to be very honest with you.
Oh, interesting. So they work for women as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's a lot of women with lower, I mean, our environment is so estrogen rich. I mean, and not real estrogens, but xenoestrogens, man-made estrogens. So it's stimulating our estrogen receptors. And through menopause, that feels great, but it also has an influence on our progesterone and our testosterone levels. So they don't have to do as much as the men, but they can absolutely, it does help them where they feel like, okay, they feel a little bit more like, yeah, I want to get involved with my husband again or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. So maca is another one. There's actually a product called Be Vital, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. And it is a combination of maca and elk antler velvet, because there is another product that is deer antler velvet, but this is elk antler velvet. So I know you're like, wait, what?
Well, I'm just like thinking to myself, how did anyone figure out that this did anything for the human body? Like, how does that even come to be?
We could get into that on anything for sure. So basically there's a protein that's found in antler velvet, and it's rich in chondroitin, glucosamine, and collagen. But it does help even with arthritis. So a lot of men will find this really actually very beneficial for sex drive, for, you know, their hormones, but also for like any kind of like inflammation in their joints, arthritis and stuff like that. The research has shown that it's actually helpful with supporting the prostate, which is interesting because Usually the prostate, I know I wasn't going to get into all this, but I have to a little bit. The prostate doesn't do as well with high levels of testosterone, but for some reason, the research has shown that the elk antler velvet does increase or can help the body make more testosterone, but it has an inverse relationship where it actually helps with prostatitis, so it brings it down, unlike
Wow.
taking synthetic testosterone, which does increase the size of the prostate, or it can. So it's interesting, and I haven't quite been able to figure that completely out, but that's basically what the research is showing. So those 4 things, and I'll have men do that twice a day.
All 4 things.
Yep, I'll have them do it twice a day, and I'll have them start off a little bit slow, and most of them don't want to, but they want to start it off as high as they possibly can. I mean, generally it's not going to hurt them. I usually have patients take their supplements at least 2 hours away from any medications, just because I don't want there to be any kind of interaction, especially with any kind
smart.
of
Yeah.
herbal remedies and stuff like that. But I've actually had men come into my office and like rush to me and hug me and thank me because it completely changed their lives.
Oh.
So, and the women are thanking me like, thank God my husband's sex drive is back too, because, they like the intimacy as well. So yeah, it definitely impacts both partners for sure.
This is honestly mind-blowing. First of all, the elk antler velvet is just like is trippy to even hear. But I think it's great that there are natural options to manage this. I don't think most men, well, first of all, they're not going to talk about it, which means they're going to Google it, which means they're not likely at all really to find the natural solutions online. They're going to find the vacuum, like you mentioned, or the surgery, or the meds. They're getting hit
And
with
counseling. Don't forget counseling. You're going to rush right out for that.
Well, this episode is really important because there's just a lot of shame and, things tied to ED that shouldn't be, but they are, for men, and their ego is affected, and it's just very emotional for them. So I feel like just talking about it here, and they can watch this episode or listen to this episode privately and order these supplements for themselves and try them. And the good thing is none of them say anything on the bottles that they're for this, so they could have it right out on their counter if they wanted to. And that's not the case with like a medication. So it's discreet by nature, which is nice.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, they can take it twice a day. They could probably take it 3 times a day, but I always tell guys like start with one of each of these like twice a day and see how you feel. But they tend to feel a lot better. They tend to have more energy. They tend to just be functioning better. Their brains function better. They tend to be a little less agitated, I think. But the other thing, like I said, is the liver. So I always support the liver with something for the liver as far as that all goes. So Livaplex, Livaplex, Livaplex from Standard Process, sometimes Milk Thistle Forte from MediHerb or Standard Process. That's their herbal portion of the company. I also use Livton, Livco, but those are herbs. So depending on what pharmaceuticals people are using, I tend to go more toward the Livaplex or the SP Cleanse. So I tend to do that and try to keep some of the herbal stuff away just as a precaution so that I don't have the interactions if they're taking a whole host or handfuls of pharmaceuticals. If you're not taking any pharmaceuticals, I generally don't have anything to worry about.
Sorry, I have a question. Okay, so you talked about, I'll just call them the 4 horsemen because I don't know what to call the 4 things.
That's great. I love it.
Recommended. So the 4 horsemen, how many do they take? And I know you love when I ask this question, but
I know it depends on the person.
4 of each.
I would honestly start with the B Vital. I would take like 2 to 4 Livaplex a day. So 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening, generally speaking. Obviously, I'm not diagnosing you. I'm not telling you exactly how much you need to take because I'm not with you. I haven't seen your health history and I don't know what pharmaceuticals you're taking.
Yeah.
So doing 2 of the Livaplex twice a day, plenty of water. If you don't drink the water, you're going to feel crappy. So then what we're going to do is I generally do 2 of the B Vital twice a day. Start there. And then if we need to add the Toncatali or the Tribulus, I would add the Tribulus first, then the Toncatali separately. So it just sort of depends. Most of those are from Standard Process. The B Vital is not. So like I said, we'll put all of that in the show notes, not to confuse the living daylights out of you. But basically, that's going to make a huge difference right off the bat. People notice the difference within 2 to 4 days, really.
Wow.
So, yeah. But, it's about taking care of yourself too. And this isn't treating a symptom. This is giving nutrients to your body so your body can make whatever hormones it needs to make. So I want to be clear about that I'm not treating a condition. I'm supporting the body with nutrients so your body can make what it's supposed to make, what it's supposed to do.
And also, I mean, I have to encourage men to look at their lifestyles and their diets and their alcohol consumption. I mean, all of these things need to be examined if ED is an issue for them, taking a look at that and maybe making some adjustments there. So that's the other half of it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of issues that can go on with this. It's not just one side. It's not like, oh, this is what's happening, so just do this. Like there's a lot. Yeah. And connecting with their wives, that's another thing, or their partners, whatever that is. Like there's a connection issue. You did bring up the kids, and this can happen with same-sex relationships, marriages, with two men who are raising a child or children, and they both have high-pressure jobs. They're both trying to handle things. One of them is doing more of the housework than the other one is, and the other one comes
not getting good sleep.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen. It doesn't matter what the situation is, but not getting enough sleep, not getting enough together time. And that happens with any relationship, is really reconnecting, because a lot of what goes on in our bodies is a reaction. Our bodies will react to that.
Yeah, to what's going on emotionally, for sure.
And I mean, women always say, you have to be nice to me, you have to talk nice to me, you have to kiss me, and not just because you want to be with me. And that's my perspective. That's why I don't go into a lot of the same sex stuff, because I don't have any experience with that. So I will when I can, as far as that goes, and with my experience with couples that are same sex couples. But at the end of the day, women tend to be more in their head, and you have to caress their heads, not really, but you know what I mean? Like you have to talk nice to them. You have to be sweet to them. You might need to bring them flowers. You might need to do all this stuff. And long term, before they will ever put out, like, I don't know how else to put it, or want to, really. And it's about wanting to. And there's a lot of men who know when their wives are not into it, and then they're not that into it. You know what I mean? So There's a lot of mental stuff that goes into our intimacy, regardless of whether you're heterosexual or homosexual at this point. So, or whatever else. So yeah, no, it's a lot. There's a lot to this. And men are complicated as we are, just in a different way. And they tend to not want to discuss it. And when they're given options that maybe those meds don't really make them feel good, but they're not going to tell anybody, because obviously the other choices of a penile implant, a vacuum, or counseling, it doesn't sound super exciting to them. So
yeah. Well, and back just a second when you were talking about women and what you have to do to get them in the mood and all that, I heard many moons ago, men are like microwaves and women are like crock pots. So it's just like the speed at which yeah.
But like I said, some men too, if they know that their wives aren't really into it, they're gonna they're not gonna push themselves on their wives.
Yeah.
So, or on their partners or whatever. So that's where that comes into play too. So then that messes with their heads as well. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into this, and having an open conversation is always, I think, helpful. Men might hyper react to this information because it's not something they want to discuss. So they tend to get a little more volatile just to push you away, because they're not discussing this. This is not something they're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think needs to be discussed, so that there's no shame in either regard. Because if a man can't get an erection and his partner, wife, husband, whatever it is, they might take it personal, like, oh my gosh, you don't find me attractive anymore. So this is a huge snowball of craziness, to be very honest with you. So
yeah,
way more
the ripple effect of the physical aspect of this is pretty major.
Yeah, menopause looks easy compared to this. And the women out there are like, no, it isn't. But I mean, really, when you look at all of the, facets of this, it definitely has an impact on both people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was a very informative episode on a delicate topic, but I think this episode is going to get a lot of interest from both men and women.
And hopefully it gives everybody a little bit of extra information that they can start going outside those lines to figure out what's going to work for them.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, I think men are just going to be grateful to know that there is a natural option to managing this issue. And so they aren't taking pharmaceuticals with side effects or all the other extreme options. And then there's counseling. So the God forbid, the dreaded counseling. Well, thank you, Dr. Jen. This was a great episode, and thank you everybody for listening. If you haven't joined our school community before, I'll put the link in the show notes. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
That wraps up another episode of Speaking Holistically. Thank you for listening. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration to take charge of your health. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, be sure and join the Speaking Holistically school community by clicking the link in the show notes. There, you'll get access to daily podcast episodes, weekly live Q&As, educational content, and so much more. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, be well, stay curious, and keep speaking holistically.